Hello, hello, how are you? It's Charmaine. I'm here to make honey beans. Let's get started. This is about 3 pounds, a little over 3 pounds of beans. And the plan will be to strain it. That's the equivalent of 50 ounces or about 6 cups of beans. So when you buy your beans, buy honey beans if you're wanting to make that delicious, succulent Nigerian beans that we make. So these honey beans have been picked, but of course I get lazy sometimes when I'm picking my beans, and I really do my best to make sure there's no rocks in it and no debris. So I'm just gonna strain it to get some, just those very tiny particles and dirt. This water has already been boiled. So we're gonna go ahead and strain it now and add warm water. So I think people eat more vegetarian and more vegan meals than they want to admit. This is one of the vegan meals that people eat all the time, and they just say, "Oh, I can't eat a meal without eating meat." Well, there you have it. Beans is a perfect meal. You can even eat just the beans alone because beans are rich in fiber, carbohydrates, protein. And then of course by the time you add oil and tomatoes, peppers, onions into it, then you've got all your macronutrients in one meal. So I'm adding the water now. I'm pretty much filling the whole pot with water. Most of the pot anyway. The beans takes up about almost half the pot, so we're gonna let the water hover over the beans about 3 inches. And then we're gonna add salt to taste. And onions. A lot of onions. Let me hurry up and get this back on the pot. So, salt to taste. Not too much salt because you'll regret it. You can't take out the salt, but you can always add more salt. Go ahead and slice your onions in there. I went ahead and peeled 2 onions, so slice your onions. Sometimes when I'm in a mega hurry, I just throw the onions in there because it's going to boil for the next 2 hours approximately. Make sure that the beans are well cooked, you know. It's okay if the beans are a little mushy, but if the beans are too hard when you start to fry it with the tomatoes and the oil, then you'll regret that. You can always continue to cook it after you've added the oil, but it takes longer. This is a staple in our home. We always have beans. Honey beans, honey beans, honey beans. You can do this with black eyed peas, brown beans, different sorts of beans, but I can 100% tell you this is the best. So put your pot on high, fill it up with water, and let that boil for the next 35, 40 minutes, and then check the water level. Hello everyone, we are cooking the beans. So beans look pretty good. The water level is still pretty high. This is about 45 minutes of cooking. So we're going to continue to cook the beans. In the meantime, let's go ahead and get started on our sauce, or really stew. This oil is pretty hot, so I'm going to turn that off because this burner gets really high. So what I'm doing is, so I don't have to put so much palm oil, I'm starting off with some canola oil. That's about half a cup of canola oil. And I'm bleaching my palm oil. So I'm gonna just go ahead and start frying the palm oil now. And I've put in about, I would say, 1/4 of a cup of palm oil. And then I am letting that bleach. In the meantime, I'm going to blend my tomatoes, onions, and peppers. It's a pretty decent pot of beans. So what I'm doing now is I'm just slicing my tomatoes into my blender. Just cutting each tomato into 3. And just removing the stems from the peppers, 3 or 4 pieces of tomatoes. Removing the stem from the, peppers. And then another half of an onion. I use a whole lot of onion, especially when I'm not using Knorr. I just feel like that's kind of the key to flavorful food without having to use Knorr and Maggi. So there goes my blender. I'm just gonna add a little water to the blender. I would say you can just add a little bit, just like 1/4 of a cup of water. Okay. So we're gonna This is basically how you make stew. You don't have to I don't normally add palm oil to my stew. So now I have it on high. So that'll blend pretty well. So the oil is bleached. That's a mixture of canola oil and palm oil. Of course, the more of palm oil you cut in there, the tastier, but you know, we're really not trying to use too much palm oil. These beans are so tasty that you don't even need the sauce. You can actually just eat these beans as is with just a little salt, onion, and the beans. Once they're boiled, you can, sometimes I'll just keep half the pot unboiled and then the other part I'll go ahead and mix with the sauce. So this channel is basically for anybody who just feels like, well, yeah, I want to learn how to cook different vegan and vegetarian meals. I want to learn how to cook different West African meals, or I already know how to cook. I just want different techniques. So I think cooking is an interest. Cooking is something people do because they feel like doing it. You know, I just think that a lot of times cooking, yes, it does feel like a chore, and nobody has time to cook. No one. So just do your best. The more you cook, the more you can control the ingredients, the more you can control the amount of salt, fat, and sugar that you take in, the more you can control the preservatives and the additives that you eat. So cooking is definitely a must, I believe. So we are basically frying our tomato, onion, pepper puree, and this is basically how you make stew. Sometimes in stew I'll add fresh ginger, and that just gives an extra umami flavor to the stew. So we're gonna let this fry. My base in my stews are usually red peppers, if I can get some red peppers. So for a good stew, you can always use red peppers, tomatoes, onions, habanero pepper, ginger, blend it all up, fry it just the way I just showed you. Or you can omit the palm oil. Usually when I make stew, I just use canola oil. And there you have it. You have a stew in the next 45 minutes. Just add your seasoning and your whatever you're choosing to put in your stew. So right now you see that it's frying, and we are gonna continue to fry this probably for another 10 minutes before we add it to the beans. All right, we are on the last few minutes of our beans. I've taken out some of the beans. My sauce is done, and all I'm doing is adding my sauce to the beans. It's that simple. Some people choose to eat the sauce kind of like on the side or in the middle of the beans, or you could just mix the beans like this, and that's it. That's all it takes, and you're done. The seasoning I added was paprika, onion, more onion, minced onion, and a little bit of dehydrated ginger, and a little salt to taste. There you have it. Succulent, delicious honey beans. Go ahead and visit Nutrisys.com for services that I provide. And subscribe and like my channel. Thanks.